What's up, everybody? 'Tis I, Dave Murray, the big guy at Mayniax Branding, and for this one, I think I'm going to talk a little bit about brand names. Okay, I know I'm going to talk a little bit about brand names, specifically how to come up with a name for your own brand, and I'm also going to discuss whether or not I think that Monday.com is a quality brand name. So let's get cracking. Okay, now first things first, there are actually companies out there that I've seen that charge as much as 80 grand to come up with a brand name. I'm guessing most of you don't want to spend 80 grand to come up with a brand name. That 80 grand could be spent on, well, pretty much anything else. So I'm here to help you understand ways to come up with your own brand name. Now, first, before we get into those ways, understand that you want to come up with a brand name that can potentially stand for your category/industry. So with that in mind, let's get to the first way to come up with this thing. Okay, the first way is I'm thinking you should grab an old school dictionary. Maybe not even old school. I'd be willing to bet they still make dictionaries in 2021. But you want the paper because it would be hard to do this online. And just flip through that bad boy and find a noun that you've never heard of as far as a brand name is concerned. Something sort of like Apple, where Apple obviously is a fruit and has nothing to do with computer software, hardware, any of that stuff. And yet they chose Apple to name that company just because it's a fun little name. Easy stuff, easy to remember, grand. The problem with doing that, from what I can tell, is years ago it was phenomenal because a lot of companies hadn't caught on to that yet. But today, everybody's caught on to that. So you'll have other companies that are just some noun that you've heard that do something completely different than what the noun actually means. You're going to run into that all over the place. And if you don't run into that, you're going to think you have something. You're going to look up the .com or even the .net, and you're going to find that it's available for sale for like 5 grand because somebody else thought, hey, we can't use that name, but somebody else might. And if they really want it, they'll spend money for the domain name. So it gets pretty dicey with that one. Like I said, years ago, you could have done it. Today, it's a little trickier. I'm not saying it's impossible. You might find the perfect word. I'm just saying it's going to be a lot of work. And if that's the way you want to go, you almost might need to spend that 80 grand. Yeah. Okay, on to number 2. Just one hand. Okay, the second way to do this is to use a made-up word. And I have to say, I think that's a lot more doable because chances are if you're making up a word, you might find the .com available because nobody else thought to make up that word. Now, there are several ways to do this. One, you could use an anagram of an existing word. For instance, I don't know, worm. Worm's a terrible idea, but you could maybe slip some of that around and go MORW and you're now more. That was actually a terrible example, but you know what I'm talking about at this point. You just take a word, you mix up the letters to spell something else. The second idea is what's called telescoping. Telescoping is when you take 2 words and you kind of mash them together to come up with an actual brand name. Think Microsoft, microchip, software, Microsoft. And the next way to kind of make up your own word is by taking an existing word and spelling it differently, like Google. The original spelling of Google, there's actually a word that is Googol. And then there's somebody else you might have heard of if you've been watching these videos a while. What's that one? Oh yeah, Mayniax. Mayniax, because the original spelling of that word is Manics. Yeah, I think so. I've been spelling it the other way for so long, I almost forgot the real way to spell it. So that's how you can come up with your own word that you can use for your brand name and which will hopefully be able to, in the future, stand for the category that you're partying in with your brand. And now, let's talk about a third way you could come up with a name, but I'm not so sure you really want to. That'll, of course, segue perfectly into the whole Monday.com discussion. Here we go. Yep, here we go. The third way that that you can come up with a brand name, and probably don't want to. Now, first, let's discuss real quick just a little accident, things that can happen to anybody, and you hope they don't, but they can. So there's a beer called Corona. Corona got hit a little bit this past year, and I'm guessing I don't have to exactly tell you why. What happened was people were actually online looking up whether or not Corona beer had caused the coronavirus, and took a bit of a hit. I'll be honest, I haven't looked up how much market share they've gained back, how much they've been able to fight through a lot of this, but I do know they took a hit based solely on their name, and that's just something that's totally unforeseeable. That's something we can't control, and we hope that whatever name we pick doesn't fall prey to that. But there are names you should avoid. Can you imagine, in this day and age, deciding maybe a name like Hitler was a good idea? Probably not a very good brand name for you to go with. Another one that right now in present day seems like a bad idea would be Karen. Even if you tried spelling either of those differently, you're going to end up with the same pronunciation. I don't think you want either of those. That brings me to Monday.com. The reason you don't want Karen and Hitler is the association with each of those names right now. The reason I'm not sure about Monday.com is, what do you think when you think Monday? First off, as an entrepreneur, we are trained to think to ourselves, every day is awesome, we can power through, go, go, go. But even we, from time to time, get a weekend off, and then Monday comes up, and we're just not quite ready for it. Now think about the vast majority of people who go to work every day that don't even like their jobs and truly hate Mondays. And this company comes along and calls itself Monday.com. Now, in its space, it's sort of a CRM tool, and it's up against Rank. It's up against companies like Trello and Basecamp. I had experience with Basecamp. That kind of stuff just annoys me, so I'm the wrong target market anyway. I'm just saying, I'm not sure that Monday.com is a very good brand name, simply because people hate Monday. They hate Mondays. They really, really, really hate Mondays. And I could be wrong. I will tell you, if somebody came to me and said, I want to name my business Monday.com, I would look at them and very honestly say, are you sure? Because you know people hate Mondays, right? So maybe what they're doing is just deciding to subvert total expectations. Now, I would argue subverting expectations doesn't work in a franchise film, The Last Jedi, and subverting expectations probably doesn't work in the case of branding. For a great brand to flourish, people need to be comfortable with it, and I'm not sure anybody's going to be fully on board with Monday.com. They could totally prove me wrong. That's half the fun of this whole branding thing, is trying to figure out, okay, are they going to do something completely unforeseen and end up just absolutely awesome? I mean, they're spending plenty of money in advertising. That's why I even thought about this, is because every time I have a YouTube video running, there's an ad that shows up, and half the time it seems to be Monday.com, which means, because I've mentioned it several times in this, you might be seeing that ad somewhere down the line eventually. Very strange. But I hope they pull it off. I want to see if they do. I want to know how they did it, because it's all something that a branding nerd like me would love to see happen, because it kind of goes against everything. And if it goes against everything and still pulls it off, I want to know how it's done. Anywho, that's me being a bit of a branding nerd. Yeah, I'm not only a nerd, I'm also a branding nerd. And that's all I've got for everybody this fine day. So do me a favor and show me your brand name in the comments, and let me know how you came up with it. Did you use the first method? Did you use the second method? Did you, please, for the love of everything holy, ignore the third method? Or did you try something completely different? Let me know. Show us the name. Let me know how you came up with it. And if you're still trying to come up with a name, make sure and let us know which method you're going to try to use. Are you going to try to use an existing word? Are you going to try and make up a new word? Are you going to totally avoid words with horrible connotations? Hint, totally avoid those words. That would be a good thing. And as always, if you're looking to learn how to build your own brand, head on over to patreon.com, where I'm putting up exclusive videos on how you can actually build your brand. Check it out. It's good times. Still makes me happy. Now, as always, make sure you like, comment, subscribe, follow, share, do all the things, and I'll catch you next time. So until then, have fun, stay safe, stay healthy, and above all, stay gutsy, gang.